I'm Nicola Talent, and you're listening to Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the sins of the underworld. We're Ireland's top podcast for 2025, and now we've got a new website. So if you want to learn more about crime and criminals, if you want stories, extras, and podcast subscriber specials, go to www.crimeworld.com. I like the way I sort of go, we're ready to go, and then I go, what are we doing here?
Exactly,
You know
exactly.
What I mean? But I know
I've been sort of gently prodding to you things we might talk about, but you've ignored me because you've texting and you can't.
I was actually sending an email, so that's done.
Well, digital communications.
And I have to turn off my phone so that it doesn't ring in the middle of this, because it often does, and that's very unprofessional.
Yeah. So now a traditional podcaster would spend the next couple of hours preparing.
Yeah.
But of course, Chloe's already pressed record.
Yeah, it's Chloe's fault, actually.
It is, isn't it? The younger generation.
I know. Who do they think we are? We have a little bit of something prepared for today. We're going to talk about a new Europol report, which is about drug gangs and how they're moving cocaine into Europe, how they are bypassing or attempting to port controls and the methods they're using. Did you see a figure in that report, because I couldn't just see it, of the value of the cocaine industry in Europe?
No, they don't give a specific monetary value, but they simply say that the demand is absolutely, it's hit unprecedented levels.
And still growing. And
they don't put a figure on it, but they get really into the fact that the demand has never been higher. The production of cocaine has never been higher in South America, and Europe has never been such a focus for the industry as it is now.
And there's loads of reasons for that, which Europol don't necessarily go into, but the fact of the matter is it's a simple supply and demand
100%
issue.
Yeah, they say, but they do note like there's this increased efficiency in coca cultivation in Latin America.
Yeah.
Now, we don't fully know all about that, but basically they seem to be able to grow it, process it, and package it a lot quicker in Latin America. And Europe, like the American market is obviously a huge market, but it's probably been quite mature as a market since the 90s. But Europe has had this boom over the last couple of decade in particular. And the demand is still growing, I suppose, places like Eastern Europe, as people get more and more disposable income.
And also, I think what had happened over the past few years with the EncroChat hack and the Sky ECG hack, what happened was there was a massive new focus put on the ports, particularly Rotterdam and Antwerp, because they could see from the messages being read in live time during those small periods of the hacks that there was a lot of corruption. There was a lot of people bought off in the ports, and that most of the product was coming in, sort of literally just flooding in through those ports. So there was a lot of things put in place, new
they have
equipment, and there was certainly in Belgium and in the Netherlands, there was a lot of, in actual fact, one of the priorities in the police investigations following the EncroChat was to go after the corrupted officials.
Yeah.
So that...
Yeah, they mentioned that. They say the launch of the European Ports Alliance public-private partnership, but basically they say that the ports of Antwerp, Hamburg and Rotterdam have seen dramatic reductions because obviously, in that period of time, all of the cocaine really was coming in on container ships, hidden in cargo usually.
Bananas usually.
Yeah.
It had to be whisked through because otherwise they go off.
Exactly, but they say this cocaine seizures have dropped significantly in those three ports in particular, and they've just diversified is what they say. And we've actually spoken about this ourselves. Like that sort of clampdown, it doesn't stop the cocaine coming in, clearly. But
they just move to different methods, and they're very quick to do that. Have you ever been to a massive big port?
Well, no, not really. Not one of those super ports.
So I've been to a few of them. Been to Antwerp, and also I was at the port in Hong Kong, which was just incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, you are looking out as far as the eye can see at containers.
Yeah.
There is absolutely hundreds of thousands of tons of foodstuff and other items being transported through the ports. It's just like this sea of metal containers. And like without you can have focus on, for example, goods coming in from those South American countries that are producing the cocaine. You can focus on the likes of bananas and other fruits that come in, that have to come in. But there's even so many. I mean, these ports are furnishing the European market. Like our port in Dublin is so small compared to these. So there's just absolutely millions of containers coming in into these ports every single day. There is not enough manpower.
No.
There is a lot of the drugs are also being shipped in kind of machinery that has been specially modified in order to thwart the X-ray equipment. So there's that problem. And really without absolute intelligence on the shipping documents, which is coming in, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Of course. And, presumably there would be a way in which everything was checked, and it would literally grind the European Union to a halt. And clearly they're not willing to do that, to destroy the economy in order to check every single possible container of foodstuff, for example, from South America. So it's just not going to happen. But obviously that increased, I presume that port's network policing plan, I presume that mostly is based on intelligence, sharing information, probably some sort of analysis of shipping patterns. And that has had an impact, or it has an impact on the drugs coming in there. But they've just shifted pattern.
Yeah.
It's just as simple as that. And of course, this report does mention the MV Matthew, even though it doesn't actually mention it by name, but it gives an example. It uses it as an example of this new phenomenon, probably not new actually, but an increasing phenomenon of having a mothership specially bought, filled with cocaine, brought across the ocean, and then for cocaine to be dropped off at individual countries at sea, which is, they say, is an increasing phenomenon. So they reference two cases, the MV Matthew and also a huge operation that went on in the Canary Islands last year, which was, I think, one of the biggest in European history.
This Operation Sombra Negra.
That's the one where they were obviously, the Canary Islands is much less, it's going to be much nicer than the sea off the coast of Cork. So they were able to get the rib boats to collect that and bring it in up to 100 miles away, which obviously would be, again, a bit less likely to be detected. So that's the at-sea transfers. But they also focus on these narco submarines, which are...
To go back to the at-sea transfers just for a moment, the MV Matthew, on its trip across the Atlantic, did head first for the Canary Islands, and it slowed there. And from my understanding, they have no idea whether or not anything was offloaded or transferred there before it came to the coast of Ireland, and where the boat began to act in a way that alerted authorities. The MV Matthew, I would imagine, was also an intelligence-led.
I think so.
It wasn't just that they were all acting strange.
Yeah.
Of course, law enforcement are going to say that because they don't like to officially claim a lot of these things are intelligence-led. But the fact of the matter is, having a human being, a human source of information, is the most important for all of this.
And they actually tell as well how Spain is continuing to be like an important part of the drug trafficking ecosystem, because they're saying these rib boats, they go along the Spanish coast, along the coastline of Andalusia, and they have all these rivers that they can nip up on and then distribute the cocaine. Right. So rather than having to land it in maybe one kind of port like they do in Ireland, where obviously that gives you the focus for law enforcement, they can just nip up these rivers.
Right.
And of course, Spain, there is a reason why Spain is still important, and it still is. Maybe not the head narcos aren't there.
Yeah.
But they still all have representations in that country. And
they reference West Africa as well. I mean, that was a traditional route really from South America to West Africa and then up through Europe. Yes, exactly. So they're saying West Africa is becoming more and more important. And obviously there's just a system of smuggling from West Africa right back to the 1970s when
cannabis, hash basically was being brought across. So you have people that have been doing it for years. But West Africa, and of course the Kinahans, had
an interest there
They
in airline transport up the country and
Exactly.
and etc. There was a sort of a plan there to take over part of that route, because of course the Kinahans are only relevant to the likes of the Russian and the Iranian regimes once they have ownership over those routes and they have access to the transport. Now, to get less technical in one way, but international drug gangs are pretty rich, so they can invest a huge amount of money in new and more high-tech methods. And one thing I found interesting in the report was they talk about drones and these
helium
balloons that are going to be drone activated. So they actually don't even have, and the future, they're talking about these ships just being operated without people on them.
Totally. They were saying these sort of mini subs in particular. Now, presumably the drones and the helium balloons don't go, they don't go across the ocean, but they get the cocaine to a certain position and they can be delivered by drone there.
Or they can collect...
They can get them across.
They can collect it off the boats instead of these ribs, semi-inflatable ribs going out.
Exactly. Or getting them over borders. So you might get it into some country in the Mediterranean, and then you can get it further in. But they're talking about these submarines being activated remotely. Which of course cuts out this huge amount of risk, and certainly they seem to be focused on.
Who would ever want to or would get into a submarine? I have to say, it would be my worst nightmare with the claustrophobia I suffer from.
Exactly.
To be locked into a metal.
These are you're basically in a little phone box. I mean, these are small submarines. These are not like US Army, or I'm sure that.
And then you're under the sea on top of it, so it's double claustro.
And of course, your local drug gang probably doesn't engage in good health and safety and that sort of check. I mean, it really does not look good. And they're obviously hugely expensive. Like, I mean, the MV Matthew was 10 million or something, wasn't it? So these submarines are going to be expensive, but they're not going to be spending their money on comfort for their passengers. You can be sure of that.
What are submarines actually for these days?
Well, I mean, they're a military thing.
I knew you would have an answer.
Well, I mean, that's what it is.
Google.
No. I mean, submarines are military.
Yeah.
Military devices to sink ships. I mean, that's what they were invented for. You have them underwater and they torpedo.
They never took off as sort of methods of transport for the general public.
They didn't. There's not a lot of people with their private. Of course, there was the famous case recently where a private submarine, there was a tragedy, but it
and there was the case where that lady, that journalist, went to meet. That was again my big. I would roll around the bed at night thinking about that. She went to meet a contact and she was murdered on a submarine. In a submarine.
Yeah, but don't get in any submarines.
No.
But actually, either coincidentally, with this report coming out, you see the extent of these submarines that the Portuguese police intercepted a narco sub off the Azores this weekend carrying 9 tons of cocaine. Now, MV Matthew, I think, was 2.2, was it? So you're talking about 4 times the amount of the MV Matthew, the cocaine. I think the values of these things are always, a bit up in the air. Some of them were saying 900 million, another was saying 600 million. But a total of 300 bales of cocaine. It's described as a semi-submersible. So I'd say what that means is that...
Was there human beings on that one?
But there was, and this is the bit you'll really enjoy, right? And don't fully know how this works, right? So don't say, and how does that work? I don't know. The DEA were involved, the UK National Crime Agency. The intercepted vessel eventually sank, taking the 35 bales of cocaine with it to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. The 4 men on board, 3 Colombians and a Venezuelan, were arrested. So...
Oh, they got off it, obviously.
I presume so.
They didn't go down. Imagine you went down to the bottom of the ocean with that amount of cocaine.
Yeah.
Knowing you're going to die. What would you do?
I suppose it takes some cocaine. What else could you do? But yeah, so that's the extent of it. And there was one at the end of last year. That's very much features in this report of another 6 tons of cocaine. So the narco subs were actually, I think, invented by the Medellin cartel. They used to use them towards the end, or the Cali cartel. So they have been around a long time, but they were always just intent on getting across that bit of the ocean from Mexico, basically, to the US. But these have become an increasing feature. But I have seen some of the pictures of it, and yeah, you would not want to be, spending your time on one of those narco subs.
You'd need to absolutely have your head straight and imagine you had a panic attack in it. Anyway, let's move on from that, because the report also highlights the use of this advanced camouflage techniques.
Yeah.
So cocaine can be chemically washed into textiles, into plastics, or into food products.
Yeah.
So it's chemically washed into those. If the textiles, the plastics, or the food products make it through, be they shipped into a port or whatever, it's then extracted.
It's basically something dissolves it. If you put it on textiles, you put it in a bath or whatever, and you put in this agent that separates it from the textiles.
Sucks it back out, basically. Yeah, so that's been used more and more. It's also, as I had mentioned, concealed inside industrial machinery, simply because industrial machinery is massive. You can transport a lot of cargo in it. We saw that used by our own Thomas Bomber Kavanagh. In actual fact, that's what he's serving the very lengthy 22-year sentence in the UK for. He had been using this hollowed out machinery. I can't remember what the machinery was actually for.
Something to do with pressing steel or something like that, wasn't it?
And he was transporting the machine from Belgium. Obviously, the cocaine was making it through the ports, the Belgian ports, and then it was being transported in this machine all the way to these lockups that he had rented in the UK. The cocaine was being taken out of the machines, and money was shoved back in and sent back to pay for it.
Of course, and we had a very similar sort of technique used by Nathan MacDonald and the huge crystal meth seizure as well, which was, we never fully were clear what that machine was for either, but it was a massive piece of machine. And of course, like the X-rays just simply don't go through that sort of metal. That's one of the key bits.
Nor can the sniffer dogs.
No.
That's why they are, it's obviously a particularly good method of transporting. It also makes it difficult for forensic tests to be carried out.
Yes, and of course, even just simply, was it one of the bomber ones that took hours and hours for them to actually break into it?
Yeah.
So you have to really know what you're doing. Nobody's you're not gonna get some customs guy, fiddle around with it and come across it. And that definitely showed how the sort of Bomber Kavanagh sort of methods were much more sophisticated, because a lot of the Irish cocaine smugglers traditionally had just used the secret compartments in cars, really, wasn't it? And a lot of them used horse boxes as well. That was always another favourite. But, that would work on a visual, inspection. But sniffer dogs or X-rays would certainly show that up a lot quicker.
Now, Europol is also noting the wholesale price of cocaine in countries like Belgium and the Netherlands is falling sharply, and it's because of an oversupply.
Yeah.
And that, they say, will prompt traffickers to look elsewhere, to move into other markets.
Yeah. Which
will be Eastern European countries and further in.
Yeah, because in order to sell cocaine, people have to have a degree of disposable income. It's if a country is poor, there probably people aren't going to be only the rich are going to be able to use it. Like the other markets, of course, would be the same in countries like China or in parts of the Middle East. But the disadvantage for being a drug dealer in those countries is you might end up dead if you're caught.
Yeah, or losing your hands or something.
Exactly. Where Europe, they're certainly not going to kill you, are they, for selling drugs?
No, and you can probably get a decent defence solicitor to do his damnedest for you as well.
Yes.
So, look, Europol release these reports, which take quite a while to collate and to write.
Yeah.
And usually by the time they actually release them to us, the market kind of moved again.
Well, this is what they say. This is an interesting bit in their conclusion. It says, cocaine trafficking into Europe continues to evolve faster than traditional detection and control systems. The shift towards at-sea transfers, semi-submersibles and deep concealment has created new blind spots in maritime surveillance, financial tracing and inspection regimes. Each innovation by criminal networks exploits weaknesses in the interfaces between law enforcement, technologies and institutions. And that's what you're saying. I mean, the law catches up. And once the law catches up, the criminals evolve quicker and faster because they're not state bodies that have to do up a report and, speak to a minister. They just go and do it. So the war on drugs looks like it's not going to be won anytime soon.
Absolutely not. Okay, thanks, Niall.
Exactly.
On a rainy Friday afternoon back in February 2016, a 6-man hit team stormed the Regency Hotel in North Dublin and opened fire at an international boxing event. Their target was Daniel Kinahan, head of one of the world's most powerful drug cartels. Kinahan managed to escape. However, his loyal lieutenant and leader of his Dublin operation, David Byrne, was not so lucky. His shockingly public execution at the hands of the Hutch gang sparked one of the deadliest criminal feuds ever seen in Ireland. Over the next couple of years, many more men would die, some of them innocent bystanders. But ultimately, the Regency shooting would prove to be the catalyst for finally shattering the Kinahans' vice-like grip on Ireland's booming drugs trade. It's 10 years since the attack that changed everything. Crime World brings you the full explosive story in a brand new 6-part series exclusively available to our crimeworld.com subscribers.